Hi guys, my name is Catherine. Thank you for joining me again for another episode of Missing the Missing. In this episode, number 14, we're going to be talking about Max Castor. Max Vidar Castor was born on the 29th of April 1985 in Sweden into a family of 5, having an older sister and a brother as well as his parents. Max had a good relationship with family and friends and appeared quite happy. From an early age, it was clear that Max was intelligent, and he showed great prowess in the realm of handiwork. His father Rolf described him as quite bright and handy. Max is very clever in learning practical skills and crafts, he said. He picked up a lot from my grandfather and myself, like painting, gardening, woodworking, and including working with the anvil. Rolf explained that these things came naturally, or were obvious to him, and that after being shown how to do something once, he masters and improves it. Whilst Max could easily pick things up and solve practical problems, he had mild dyslexia, which gave him trouble reading and writing. As a result, he struggled somewhat at school and his grades were impacted. At the age of 9, Max joined the Scouts, and with family he frequently learned a lot from various outdoor and naturistic experiences. Since his early teenage years, he often enjoyed hiking and trekking in the north of Sweden with his mother and sister, the area mostly consisting of vast hilly and mountainous land, a place of outstanding natural beauty. As he grew older, Max became disillusioned with studying and frustrated at the prospect of a typical working career, which both his father Rolf and his brother Martin had. Coupled with the rising unemployment statistics in Sweden, Max was seeking a more unconventional or alternative lifestyle. Looking for an escape, Max began lightly smoking cannabis and watched countless hours of documentaries illustrating the freedom of nature. Particular favourites of his were Australian classics Prisoner, which explored the lives of the inmates and staff in a Melbourne correctional facility, and The Flying Doctors, which documented the deployment of medical staff throughout the unforgiving and secluded Australian outback. The shows ignited Max's interest in the great outdoors and fueled his desire to travel. As Max came of age and finished his studies, he wasn't sure what he wanted to do with his future and disliked the materialistic way of life. His father explained that he was concerned that life was too focused on money. Max decided to put plans in place to visit the country of his dreams, Australia, the land of the future, on a 1-year working holiday visa. He and 2 of his best friends flew from Stockholm, Sweden to Sydney, Australia, arriving on the 19th of October 2004. Max was 19 years old. The 3 bought an old vehicle and headed straight for the popular beachside town of Byron Bay in New South Wales. It's easy to see what attracted the trio, the area being known for surfing and snorkeling, sky and scuba diving, walking, cycling, wildlife and whale watching, as well as much more. They travelled up the east coast of Australia, punctuating their sightseeing and water sports with odd jobs here and there, fruit picking and dishwashing. The trio moved on in time to Brisbane, where 6 months into their trip, Max's 2 friends had to return home to Sweden. The reason for this is unknown, though there did not appear to be any animosity, and Max decided to carry on the trip of his lifetime solo. His sister had showed him an article about a trek before he had left Sweden, and Max flew from Brisbane to Melbourne to enjoy the south or Victorian coast. Max is believed to have stopped in Geelong, and he purchased some hiking equipment, intending to tackle the famed Great Ocean Road by foot. This takes approximately 4 hours and 15 minutes to drive, all being well, and is estimated to take about 55 hours by foot, not accounting for stops along the way, which would definitely be needed, or bus journeys in operation across the route. It's not known if, but is expected that Max joined an official tour and would therefore not be trekking completely alone. This is, however, unverified. Prior to Max's disappearance, he was believed to have been seen at the Otways, which is a geographical region surrounding the Otway Ranges. In it sits a beautiful national park with a diverse range of landscapes and vegetation types. He is then believed to have made it to Warrnambool, from where he sent his sister an email, the contents of which have not been publicly released. The email was sent on the 29th of March 2005, and it has been noted that he wished his family a happy Easter and told his sister that he was waiting for his trekking tour, but that the weather was a bit too cold. This is taken to mean, but again not verified, that the trek had been cancelled or delayed due to bad weather. It was 1 month before his 20th birthday. Rolf said of his son, "He looks like a Greek god in some way." I suspect this is a little lost in translation and is more of a likening of Max to the stereotypical Adonis figure rather than anything to do with vanity. At the time, Max was described as a Caucasian male who was 19 years of age. He was about 189 centimetres or 6 foot 2 inches tall, with a thin but muscular build. He had shoulder-length blonde hair, blue eyes and a fair complexion, though he could be tanned by now after so long in the sun, and there is hereditary male baldness in his family. He was last seen wearing a blue wind cheater, white t-shirt and jeans. He was also carrying a light blue backpack and what has been described as a multicoloured clutch bag. The precise dates of Max's disappearance is reported differently in various sources, so I'm going to stick to the most popular and agreed upon details. Between the 24th of March to the 30th of March 2005, Max withdrew all of his funds and closed his Australian Commonwealth bank account and emailed his family to wish them a happy Easter, as we've mentioned. The 31st of March, he packed most of his belongings into 4 parcels, which he sent back home to Sweden from the post office in Warrnambool, carrying the dated area postmark. This was alleged to have cost approximately $250. With the parcels were letters or notes to his family or his brother and 2 friends. It is not established if these are the same 2 friends that had joined him for the former 6 months of his trip. The contents of the notes and the parcels are debated, and we will get into more detail on this later. The day after that, the 1st of April 2005, Max took a bus to Port Campbell, where he was seen at approximately 3:30 p.m. walking east along the Great Ocean Road Highway towards Apollo Bay. This is officially recorded as being the last confirmed sighting of Max, though that may not be strictly so. It was reported that Max was seen on the 5th of April in the general store at Wye River, where he is said to have conversed with a shopkeeper. Max told her that he was heading north and that he had no money. The shopkeeper gave him a bottle of water. As we mentioned earlier, the order of these sightings may be slightly off due to the disparity in media reports, but the gist remains the same. It would appear that, from sightings, we can piece Max's movements together. It looks like he managed the Great Ocean Road from Geelong in the east to Warrnambool in the west, before taking a bus back to Port Campbell and subsequently moving further back east to Wye River, where he said he was heading north and more than likely then onto Lorne. From here, we lose track of Max, and there have been no confirmed sightings of him since. On the 21st of April 2005, Max sent an email to family, again the contents of which have not been released. The packages that Max had sent back to Sweden arrived on the same day. Their contents raised alarm with family and friends, and Max's father Rolf contacted both the Swedish and Australian authorities, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and Swedish Immigration in Australia, prompting Victoria Police to launch an investigation. Investigation began, in effect, with the receipt of the packages and letters in Sweden. There are varying accounts of what is contained within the letters, but most sources seem to agree that the packages, at least, contain the following: books and gifts for his family, not further described, photographs of himself, what appeared to be the last of his money, and his return air ticket to Sweden. A couple of sources are mistakenly reporting that Max's passport was returned with the rest of his possessions. It wasn't. The postmaster who helped Max return his belongings to Sweden was spoken to and said that Max had appeared a little tense, though did not further elaborate. The letter addressed to Max's brother Martin was written in English rather than their native Swedish, which stood out as odd to the family. It has been judged to have appeared to have been written with some help, though I'm unsure how this could be determined, and nothing further has been released to substantiate this. Information pieced together from varying sources provides the following general idea of what was written in the notes that Max sent home. Quote, "Something strange has happened to me and I don't know how to cope with it. I am tired of myself, but there is still much beauty in the world. Things will change in the future. Now I am vanishing. I love you all. No tears." It appeared that Max was no longer sure what his quest in life was, and that he regretted the things that he said, though no context has been offered and the comments can be interpreted in different ways. The Castors conducted, in as much as they could, an internet-based search and written appeals, and were quick to commend the combined efforts of the Victorian police, the Swedish consulates and embassies, the Swedish Church abroad, the Salvation Army, and many other agencies and individuals. Max was adding to the Australian Missing Persons Register, and family were fervently sending emails, with Rolf, his dad, spending hundreds of hours writing letters and using the internet in search of Max. Quote, "I spent maybe 5 hours a day looking for him." Together, the Castor family have sent hundreds of emails to hostels and community groups across Australia, requesting any information and for missing persons posters to be displayed and distributed. During the course of the investigation, Rolf felt so desperate that he posted a message on the guestbook of a Great Ocean Road website. Quote, "I have a son that has disappeared in your area. Any good ideas where to look? Got peculiar goodbye letter, hard to interpret. Do you have groups living outside the normal community, attracting youths with alternative living?" Tragically, he even felt the need to say, quote, "If dead, where should I ask?" Rolf had contact with Australian police multiple times a year, describing their search efforts as incredible. They looked at all the locations where people commonly commit suicide, he said. They looked everywhere but found nothing. They scoured whole areas with helicopters and yet still found no trace of Max. There was a sighting of Max sitting on a bench in Lorne the month after his disappearance, the 4th of May, 2005. The seaside town is still on the Great Ocean Road and in the direction he seemed to be heading. Sergeant Bill Matthews explained that Lorne police were not notified until 2 hours after the sighting, by which time the individual had gone. Sergeant Matthews didn't believe that the sighting was of Max. I don't know why, but he confirmed that police were regularly checking hostels, backpackers, and local tourist hotspots, and that every lead was followed up. Sadly, to no avail. Just over a week later, on the 13th of May, there was a sighting of Max at Kennet River, walking past some roadwork crews towards Apollo Bay. He was allegedly offered a ride but refused, telling the witness that he was okay. The individual was again not located, and both of the previous sightings are unsubstantiated. Max's Swedish passport has also not been identified at any border crossing since his disappearance, and no travel records have been located. Despite this, a Canadian tourist in Indonesia claimed to have seen him in the Lombok area after recognising him from a missing persons poster. The sighting remains unsubstantiated. Further unconfirmed sightings also rolled in throughout the investigation. Did Max hitchhike with a lorry driver to Murray River, 345 kilometres or 215 miles north of Melbourne? Or did he leave Victoria in June of 2005 to head to Cowra in New South Wales, 310 kilometres or 193 miles from Sydney? There have been over 100 unconfirmed reports and sightings, of which Rolf believes about 20 to be genuine. Sadly, these haven't brought us any closer to an answer in the question, where is Max Castor? Although his Australian bank account had been emptied and closed, Max's Swedish bank account remained open and his bank Visa card was not returned with the rest of his possessions. Whilst it remained accessible, no money was withdrawn since the 28th of February 2005. Senior Constable Dannielle O'Keefe led the investigation at the time in Warrnambool, but was unable to provide a happy ending or even just an ending. Police searched caravan parks across Max's known route between Warrnambool and Geelong, but no leads were uncovered. The Australian authorities requested DNA samples from the Castor family to keep on record, but stressed that this was a routine course of action in their missing persons investigations and that there had been no evidence to suggest that foul play was involved. Dannielle O'Keefe confirmed, "We don't have any evidence to suggest he has passed. We have everything set up in preparation for that reality, but I don't have any evidence to suggest that he is not alive." She further explained, "The information given to us was he was quite adept at being able to survive in the bush for extended periods of time, but clarified, at this point in time, we've exhausted all avenues in terms of leads, but we might get information from the public that enables us to undertake some further inquiries to find Max. I keep in regular contact with Max's father, Rolf, and his family. We'd love for information that would lead to something more. The investigation into Max's disappearance remains open." The sightings of Max have continued over the years, some more believable than others, though none have panned out. Beyond this, there have been precious few updates or key events, and Max's case, and with it his identity, is tragically becoming lost to time. On the 26th of December 2005, Max's parents offered a $5,000 Christmas reward with the International Reward Center, which is a private organization that hosts millions of dollars in rewards for those to help locate missing and wanted people. Notably, the center had hosted a $25 million reward for a terrorist whose whereabouts and fate have since been learned. The 7th of August 2010, Max's case was featured as part of National Missing Persons Week to raise awareness. In April 2012, Rolf, Max's father, underwent heart surgery and was left questioning if he will find out what happened to his son before he passes away. The 29th of April 2015 would have been Max's 30th birthday. The occasion passed with no information coming to light. In October 2015, a woman claimed to have seen a Scandinavian man resembling Max selling fish on a ferry travelling between Stockton and Newcastle in New South Wales, Australia. The areas are approximately 150 kilometres or 95 miles north of Sydney. As of December 2018, both his brother and his sister and many of his friends have had children. Max has 5 nephews and nieces who, as they develop, will want to know their uncle. Max has also inherited some money, likely from the passing of a family member. He has missed out on so much. There are primarily 2 theories in this case, with the limited potential for 2 more. As many of the points are interchangeable within the theories, we will address them all together. The first and most popular theories are that Max has disappeared of his own accord, either to start a new life or to end his life. The final and minor 2 theories are that Max has either had an accident or has succumbed to foul play. Rolf Castor, Max's father, explained that the family have somewhat different opinions about what happened, but his own thoughts are clear. Quote, "I still have a decent amount of hope that Max is alive. He is a young boy that has just left school, and he is thinking what he should do with the rest of his life, and maybe he's very tired of the Western society, of the superficial life of just consuming things. He wanted a free life in Australia, and may have looked for a more spiritual life." Rolf continues, "My opinion is that he is alive," explaining that believing so had helped to reduce his anxieties regarding the whereabouts and well-being of his son. Quote, "I've worked on my fear by thinking that he may have chosen something, some type of other community or alternative, non-commercial society, practicing some craft or doing decent work and living off the land. Discussed earlier on, we know that Max is an intelligent young man who picks things up very easily and who is gifted with handiwork skills. Not to mention, over 100 sightings have come in over the years, the majority in Australia, but some further out into the southeastern Pacific, such as Indonesia. These can lend credence to the possibility that Max is, as his father believes, alive. However, whilst the sightings give him hope, Rolf has admitted that some have been sketchy and have worried him, as the man believed to have been Max, in some of them, is in bad shape. Although some sources have reported that Max had sent his Swedish passport back to his family amongst his possessions, this is, as we've said, in fact incorrect. Knowing that Max still had access to his passport, at least for the remainder of its duration, prompted hope within the family. This could explain the sightings abroad, though there have been, as we've said, no travel records and his passport does not appear to have travelled across borders. Rolf accepts the fact that Max, if missing truly of his own accord, may be keeping a low profile. He may have changed his name or identity as he has overstayed his working holiday visa and has no official documentation permitting him to stay or work in Australia. This may also be keeping him from establishing contact. Another reason that may be keeping Max from contacting his loved ones is shame. Rolf explained that he'd given his son some extra money to tide him over, but that it had been returned with the rest of his belongings. Rolf saw this, in his own words, as a slap in the face and a goodbye, and posed the suggestion that maybe Max is a little ashamed. Rolf also ponders the possibility of Max having a relationship and potentially even a family of his own by now, stating that, quote, Max was very fond of children and that he himself wouldn't be the least bit astonished. As for the rest of the family, and even friends, Rolf says his brother and sister knew him quite well. One of them believes he is alive, and the other thinks he has left us. I check with his friends now and then, and most believe he is alive, but they are a little concerned that they have not heard anything. His friends believe he is somewhere on the north or east coast, a place that they had passed through on their travels, and one which Max was attracted to due to the easygoing lifestyle. There is also the potential for Max to have joined a sect, group, or cult of some sort. The Castor family have stated that, while they hope he is just trying to find himself or do some soul searching, he hasn't fallen in with a dangerous cult. Though they have equally explained that, quote, we want him to know that if he has joined a sect, that is fine, it's his life, that is perfectly okay with us. At least then we have hope. It is better. Then we know he is alive. This is one side of the coin though, and Rolf has stated on behalf of his family that, quote, it's 50-50 that he is alive. Whilst he may have joined a group, a hippie camp, or joined the worldwide opportunities on organic farming or WOOF movement, he may have taken his life. One of the biggest proponents to this theory is the letters that Max sent home. Rolf is adamant that their letter was not a suicide note, stating, the goodbye letter did not indicate that he took his own life. Other supporters suggest that his actions, the closing of his bank account and the return of the photographs, point towards him starting a new life rather than ending it. Though there are many detractors from this opinion, including some experts who, from their analysis, claimed it was a classic suicide note. This is, however, not expanded upon. As for the more fringe theories, Rolf confirms there is the possibility of a desert accident, like a poisonous snake or thirst. Whilst he acknowledges that Max is trained in outdoor living, the Australian terrain and climate is very different to that in Sweden, and one that Max was, at least initially, unfamiliar with. And finally, Max may have encountered trouble along his travels. He may have run into the wrong people or seen something he shouldn't have. We can't delve too much into this theory, however, as we have absolutely no information on it. And now, I'd just like to share a story with you that I feel has some bearing on today's case, albeit a very different scenario. Just to remind people that there is always hope. In April of 2018, a young lady by the name of Kang Ying was reunited with her biological family, mother, father, and brother, after 24 years. As a 3-year-old, on the 8th of January 1994, she had disappeared from a street in China while her father was away changing money and her mother was serving customers at their fruit stall. The youngster had been adopted and the family were overjoyed to be reunited. The article explains that about 622 children in Sichuan have succeeded in finding their natural family since China launched the DNA database for missing children. Once again, this just reminds us that however long has gone by, there is always hope. For those wondering why I've chosen to feature Max's case on the channel, as in all likelihood he does appear to have disappeared of his own accord, I have a couple of points to make. First and foremost, Max's vanishing act does not just impact Max alone. There is a family, parents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles, potentially grandparents, nieces, nephews, the list is endless, as well as friends who are all left in a state of limbo, not knowing what has happened to Max. Whilst his wish to begin anew without contact with his family, if it truly be so, should be respected, I firmly believe that those who have supported him through the years and who have effectively been left behind also deserve an answer. I leave you now with a repeat of Max's description and some final words from his family and the investigators. At the time of his disappearance, Max was described as a Caucasian male who was 19 years of age. If seen today, he'd be 35 years old next month. He was about 189 centimetres or 6 foot 2 inches tall, with a thin but muscular build. He had shoulder-length blonde hair, but there is hereditary male baldness in his family, which may have afflicted him by now. He has blue eyes and a fair complexion, though could be quite tanned by now after all this time in the sun. He was last seen wearing a blue wind cheater, white t-shirt and jeans. He was also carrying a light blue backpack and what has been described as a multicoloured clutch bag. We've heard a lot from Rolf throughout this episode. He has been the main family spokesperson in the case. He has explained that he spent the first few years actively looking for his son, but over time he has come to accept that Max may have chosen to live out his life outside of his family circle. In retrospect, he said of Max's trip of a lifetime to Australia, quote, "I believe that he'd already decided that he wanted to stay when he left." To this date, although the family now play a less active role in the search for Max, they still continue to spread the word and raise awareness amongst Swedish tourists travelling to Australia, asking them to keep an eye out. Believing that Max is alive and well helps alleviate some of the pain his family are suffering. They understand that they have to respect his choice in life and want him to know that whatever his life choices are, they are supportive of him. The only thing they ask for is a sign of life. Quote, "Please just give us a sign so we know that you're okay. You don't need to disclose information about where you are. It doesn't matter." And of course they remind him, "You will always be welcome back home." His parents are aging now. Rolf has had 2 major life-saving operations, reminding him that, quote, "My years are running out and I have to look forward." As for the wider family and friends, Rolf keeps in touch with Max's friends back home in Sweden, some of whom now have their own families. Max has also been bequeathed some inheritance money, as we've said, which may help him on whatever journey he's on, but which may have come from a bereavement in the family of which he is currently unaware. His brother and his sister have both since had their own children, giving Max 5 nephews and nieces he has yet to meet. As they grow, they are asking questions about their Uncle Max, quote, "Where does he eat? Where does he sleep? Does he have a blanket and pillow?" Reinforcing the macabre reality of Max's disappearance. Rolf hopes that when Max has his own children, he will get back in touch. In August of 2010, Rolf described the pain of losing a child, quote, "It's like he put a wet blanket over everything. It's like a type of sadness that is always there." In order to cushion the devastating blow of being without Max, he advised, quote, "To keep my mind healthy, I have changed position a little. My position today is that he lives a good life in Australia." He still thinks of his son frequently and has stated that, especially when he visits places connected to Max, he gets a tear in the eye. As birthdays pass, Rolf finds himself asking the same question: what happened to my son? But now, he says, we don't waste Australian taxpayers' money anymore. If you do find him, tell him to contact home, or if he doesn't want to contact home, please just tell me that he is alive. And finally, by their own words, his family, father, mother, brother, sister, nephew, niece, aunts, and grandparents, have got something like a half-life. Not knowing his fate takes the joy of life away. Of course, they say, we respect his choice of life, and we would even more so if he would only let us know what it is. Max may be living in a rural community in Australia under an assumed identity. He may be undertaking craft work to support himself. He may even have a family of his own by now. Rolf is under no illusion that, by now, it's highly likely that, supposing that Max is alive, he knows his father is looking for him and has opted not to communicate. It is imperative that Max knows that his family just need to know that he is safe and well. There is no law by which he could be forced to communicate with them if he doesn't want to, but by getting a message to them, he can spare them many more years of grief. As for the Australian authorities, a Victoria police spokesperson advised that every police station in Australia had been alerted to Max's disappearance, but that police would not try to detain him if he was found. As far as they are concerned, they just want to confirm his safety and well-being. The matter of his visa will be dealt with by immigration officials. Detective Senior Constable Dannielle O'Keefe confirmed that Australian police keep in regular contact with Max's father Rolf and his family, and that, quote, "we'd love for information that would lead to something more. For the family, it's extremely difficult. They have no control over their environment and are relying on someone to provide information. They are a delightful family and they're desperate for their son to come home. We would love a happy ending, but it's not the case unless there is more information that comes forward." The sightings are still bringing hope, but they are equally a reminder of the grim reality that Max is missing. Some bring additional grief when the young man is described as being in bad shape or in need. On this point, his family state, quote, "If Max needs help, please help him. Give him a bed and some food, and his friends and family will reimburse you any costs. When last seen, Max looked pretty rough and we just think he needs some help. He's a very nice guy, just going through a rough patch. He needs our help." To confirm, again from the family, what is being asked of people is that if he is seen, try and get him talking and try and confirm that it is Max. Don't ask him directly, just ask where he's from and where he's been visiting and check the photo carefully. Then try and contact Danielle, Bolton or Mark Canavan on the information provided below. This is the Warrnambool police. You can also contact Max's friends Beverly and Luiz Wilson, also provided below. Please don't try to force yourself on Max, they say. He will more than likely run. If you have any information in relation to Max Castor's fate, please let his family know. There is a reward of 5,000 Australian dollars for useful information about Max. So thank you for joining me again for this episode of Missing the Missing. Thank you for taking the time to learn about Max's case. I'm sorry my voice is playing havoc with me over these last couple of videos. Hopefully that will resolve itself in due time. I hope everybody is staying well and healthy. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.